Hi, and welcome to my podcast on real relationships. My name is Sophie Poisson, and I am a relationship expert, international speaker, and best-selling author of the book Your Other Half. I decided to start this podcast because, in my opinion, relationships are currently not being portrayed as what they really are. Whether you're watching the news, TV in general, or on social media, the perception given to people is wrong. And my aim is to talk about what happens in the real world, talk about real stories, and listen to what real people think to or go through, as opposed to creating expectations of something that doesn't actually exist. I may not agree with everything that is said by my guests, but it is their chance to express their opinions and their stories. So relationships are not just, what we think of them, like romantic or family members or whatever. It's also the relationship that we have with ourselves. And today we're going to talk about grief. So we have Hannah Walton with us. Hi, Hannah.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. You?
Yeah, good, thank you. So can you tell us a bit more about yourself, please?
Yeah. I'm 43. I live in Winchester. I'm a marketing consultant. I live with my boyfriend and my cat Ted, who's 11 weeks old.
Right.
And more relevant to this, I lost my dad in 2016.
Okay.
And it was a shock. It wasn't something that was expected.
So a couple of years ago then? Yeah. So can you tell us a bit more about what happened?
Yeah. It was weekend. I was out. I'd just finished with my boyfriend at the time. I remember trying to ring my dad. He didn't answer the phone, but I think he was at my brother's that evening. I rang my best friend. I went out. I had a little bit too much to drink because I wasn't expecting the relationship with my boyfriend to end, and stayed out, had a few drinks, then came home. In the morning, I picked up the phone, and the first person that I wanted to ring was my dad because we were really close, and he didn't answer the phone, which was quite odd because I knew that he wasn't out. He lived in a fairly small village where people knew him, so I rang the cafe where he always had breakfast every morning. They hadn't seen him, and I rang the pub to see if he'd been there that evening, the previous evening, and they hadn't seen him. I then rang my brother and said, how was Dad when you saw him? He said, he had a bit of a cold, he seemed all right, he went home. So I tried again, still no answer, and then I started to get a bit worried. I called my brother back, and he said, okay, well, let's just wait another hour and see. My brother was at the beach with his family, so we waited an hour. I rang my best friend and said, can you give me a lift to Dad's house, because I knew I'd still be over the limit. Oddly, she picked up the phone. She never does. She's terrible at picking up the phone. But I think the universe must have been smiling at me on that particular little part of the day. So she picked up the phone and said, absolutely no problem. Rang my brother back and he said, okay, I'll put the guys on the train and I'll meet you there. And we'll all be having a laugh about it in half an hour. So we got in the car and went down to Hamble where he lived, and I had to get my friend to stop the car because I think I knew, and I was physically sick at the side of the road. Got back in the car, got to the house. My brother didn't have his keys, but he'd been shouting through the letterbox. And as soon as I handed my brother the keys, because he knew Dad wasn't downstairs, he ran in, went upstairs, went into Dad's bedroom, came out, shut the door behind him, and just went like that to me. Sorry. And so I sort of collapsed on the stairs, and my brother went back into the room and rang 999. I spoke to my friend who I went downstairs and spoke to my friend who knew Dad really well as well. And so we sat outside for a little while. And then I said, I can't leave my brother dealing with this on my own. He's my younger brother. So I went upstairs, and by that time he was administering CPR. He'd had to pull Dad off the bed. And I started making a bit of noise, and the people on the other end of the phone said, whoever that is that's coming, could you please ask them to be quiet and help to count? So I did that. Then a neighbour came in. She was a nurse. She asked my brother if he wanted help, and he said, no, it's okay, I'll do it. And kind of went on from there, really. He'd been dead for some time. He'd passed away in the night. So one thing, I guess, that we can be grateful for is that he would have been, he would have been the worst patient. We kind of knew there was something wrong, and unfortunately the NHS hadn't found the heart disease, even though he'd had a couple of warnings. He'd actually seen a lot of people in the weeks leading up to it. I think he knew, and I think people do. So that's sort of the beginning of what happened on that day.
And I do think that people do know, or they have a bit of an idea it's going to happen. As you say, the fact that he went to see so many people. So,
yeah.
Did you find that you all stuck together through it, or was someone maybe a bit stronger in the family, or?
Well, my mum and dad have been divorced for a long time. I'm 43 now. They split up when I was 11. We rang and told my mum that day, and she was very sympathetic. She was really lovely on that day. My brother and I stuck together and dealt with it. He had a sister, but they weren't very close. It fell to my brother and I, therefore, to do everything that I think usually a spouse would do. So the practicalities of the situation we're still dealing with now, and still selling bits of furniture. It took us a year and a half to sell the house. It took over a year for everything in probate to happen. All the practicalities were extremely stressful, actually, but possibly they were what I needed, because without them there would have just been the grief. And the funeral was massive, partly because he'd seen so many people recently, but we held it at the church where we all used to live together as a family in Surrey, and I've never seen it so full, which is amazing. Just so many people.
And do you think that maybe because you focused your attention so much on the practicality, you didn't really deal with, as you say, the grief?
Yeah.
Which is possibly what is still coming out now. I mean, obviously it's not going to go overnight. No,
I think that is partly the reason. I also think because there's really only my brother and I dealing with it, and he has a lot of other positive things going on in his life. He's just about to have a baby, and he has a family already, and a lot of that keeps him very busy. And also because I'm the eldest child and I'm just the more organised out of the two of us, I sort of took control anyway. I think I also think that because we were so close, it is going to be more difficult potentially for me than it might be for other people, because he was a best friend, and had been, you know, for years, really, ever since my parents split up.
And do you think there's also an element of anger, not just towards the NHS, but I mean, obviously we've had a slight conversation about this before, but towards him for not pushing and not being checked?
He was quite a laid back person. He was more of a believer in the NHS than I, and I actually don't know how happy really he was in his life. So, and I think he probably would have said, if it's my time, it's my time. That's obviously difficult.
It's difficult for those remaining.
But
I know that in my own family, my nan, who was a strong believer of that, if it's time, it's time, she actually died looking at the clock, which was quite interesting. I mean, don't get me wrong, she was 26, so it's a completely different story. But my uncle died of heart attack, and he was in hospital because he died. I can't exactly remember what happened, but there'd been something of other, which meant he had to be in hospital awaiting a quadruple bypass. And the day before, he was extremely scared, and everybody, I think, put it down to it being scared of the operation. I'm now wondering whether it was that or whether he knew, because he was supposed to be operated on the Monday morning, and he died in the night whilst in hospital, which I guess, you know, would have been in the best place for him not to die. And I think sometimes maybe when it is time, it's time.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's so many things that point towards the fact that he knew. The last couple of times that we went out for lunch, instead of meeting me somewhere, he would ask me to go and pick him up, because I think because he'd had the warning signs, and he'd had sort of, I don't know what you call them, I'm sure there's a medical term, but sort of, he thought they were maybe, he described them kind of like panic attacks, but quite severe. So he would be up in the night worried about his heart stopping. And I think he was worried about that happening whilst he was driving, because he wouldn't have wanted to injure anybody else. So even if we were going out somewhere that potentially was closer to my house, the last 2 times we went out, he asked if I would go and pick him up. And my dad would drive everywhere. I mean, that was part of his job, that he would drive all over the country to various sites of business. And he loved driving, so that, you know, that was one indicator for sure. And also the fact that the last couple of times he saw any of us, he was quite teary when he said goodbye.
Yeah.
And I think it's because, you know, he knew.
Yeah. We you know, gut instinct is something that we don't listen to enough, really. Have you ever felt the need to have counselling?
I suffer from depression, so luckily I was having counselling already, and from my point of view, I mean, I would recommend to anybody on this earth, even if you don't think you need counselling, go and have it, because if people don't know much about it, I always sort of describe it as the kind of American version of therapy, you know, where you just get to sit on a couch and go blah. Whatever kind of counselling you have, what's really important about it is that it's a third party who isn't going to tell you what you want to hear, and who doesn't necessarily know all the people involved. So it's truly objective, and they've got so much experience in how people can or don't deal with things, that the investigation into how you deal with it, and asking why you're doing it within a certain way, and you know, looking at whether there are other ways to deal with things. I mean, it's it's invaluable, and my life would not be as good as it is without it. I definitely could not have got through what I've been through without my counsellor there.
And I think, you know, because I deal with people going through grief or trauma myself, and I think that a lot of the time people might think, oh, it's just normal to be feeling that way. And actually, I don't need to see anybody. But the problem is a lot of the time they just put it at the back of their head and they don't deal with it. And it's going to literally bite them on the arse. So
well, it's like the way because I'm really open about the fact that that I have counselling, and I now have it every 3 weeks, but I was going every week. Yeah, as I said, without it, I wouldn't be able to. I don't even know if I wouldn't. Not that I wouldn't be here, but I wouldn't be in such a good place.
Yeah. And what do you say, apart from the counselling, usually it's a number of things a lot of the time, what would you say has pulled you through?
What's pulled me through? The counselling, and just putting one foot in front of the other. Nothing more complicated than that. But also, when the emotions are really difficult, recognising them and giving them space to breathe, if you like. And on days that it's really tough to get up and face the world, sometimes giving myself a break and not doing it, and chilling out and having a duvet day.
And that's important for any negative emotions. I think sometimes people, you know, yes, you have to be positive and stuff like that, but if you're really in that place where you're either sad, grumpy, angry, whatever it is, you need to get to the bottom of why, and the opportunity is easy enough. But and kind of embrace it, as you say, for the day, because it is just the way it is. You have to have time to feel the emotion, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say earlier. One of the things that I say to people when I'm talking about, when I say to them, you know, talk about how great counselling is if you don't investigate that or let it out, it's almost like putting it in a box, putting a lid on it and sitting on top of it. It's going to escape. It's going to escape. Yeah. And when it does, it's going to be violent. You know, it's going to be dramatic, and it's going to be harder than if you try and actually work through it.
And the thing as well, it's not just when it hits hard. There's also the little times where it just leaks out so softly. It's often if you're driving, or when you're like thinking of something else, and a bit like, you know, well, in the trance really, because when you're driving, it's unconscious driving, isn't it? So that's what I think people don't get. Sometimes you have to, however hard it is, it's better to face up to whatever is hurting, because if you delay it, I mean, I know some people who have not dealt with grief and we're like 15 years on. And 15 years on is far harder, and not only is it harder, they've wasted a huge amount of life.
Yeah, definitely. And it's the grief has touched and slightly sort of blackened everything that you've been doing in those 15 years, which is such a shame.
Completely. And would you say that you are now in a place of acceptance, or not just yet?
Yeah, I'm definitely accepting of it. What's still hard is I just miss him.
Yeah. And that is the hardest part, because I think even sometimes in the split, you know, when people split up, but when they're gone, you know that they're completely gone. And especially when it's sudden like this, you kind of like want to have been able to say goodbye.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's coming to terms with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really hard. And so there are still times when I feel like I need to just go and cry. And I don't mind doing that, though. I feel like I'm kind of exercising the emotion, and a lot of that for me I will do when I'm on a long walk, because I feel close to him.
And I think it's what you just said, it's important to allow yourself to cry. A lot of people don't do that. And actually, it is the release. It needs to actually come out.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
And do you think that maybe at times, so when we said about, you were focusing all your energy on the practicalities of it, do you think that at times maybe you trying to close that box at the back of your head a little bit?
I think probably sometimes, because I had to in order to be able to get those practical things done. Because I think until you do it, you don't really realise how much you've got to do. I'd seen my mum go through the practicalities with her parents, but I hadn't really been that involved. And just simple things like, there's a government service called Tell Them Once, Tell Them All. Right. And when you go to register the death, you can ring this service and it will tell the pension funds and the tax people and the council tax, and so it's anything to do with government, but it doesn't work. And so you find yourself speaking to the worst, I think, for me, were the water company and utilities companies are tough, but the TV license people, and just ringing them up and actually having to say, he is dead. You can't find him. Yeah. He's not there. And I remember my mum.
For them to get that right?
Well, you wouldn't think so, would you? And I remember my mum talking about that when her parents had died, and it's still no good. And there's one particular, and the water company were very tricky to deal with, and one particular utility company who even have a bereavement department started out really well, but then as the weeks wore on, it's almost like the mask slipped. And it's when you're dealing with, the grief. I mean, that's why you have to put it in a box, because you've actually got to have the type of conversations that we all have with utility companies on a quarterly basis anyway, for our own, renegotiating our own energy or whatever it is. You've got to have as well for your dead parent, which is just exhausting. And so you can't really do your own grieving because of stuff like that. So it's, you do have to put it on the back burner to get the practicalities out of the way, because I believe that you've got to get the practicalities out of the way. You've got to get them out of the way, get them done, and then you can move on.
Because otherwise it's still hanging over your head. You're not going to be able to do the grieving bit anyway.
Yeah.
I think the thing not to forget as well, when you receive such a news, the brain will shut down anyway. It kind of needs to rapid safe around in cotton wool, because you can't cope with the amount of pain.
Yeah.
But you're going to turn this around in a way, aren't you? And I'm not going to say turn a negative into a positive, but to a degree that's what you're going to be doing. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah. Well, I'm an English grad and I read quite a lot. And so is my best friend, and in fact she's an English teacher, and she said to me, there must be a book that you can read. She said, I'm going to look for you, because she wanted to try and understand what I was going through in order to help, and she came up with a few, and I just didn't really, the descriptions didn't really resonate with me. And then I found one that was called Losing a Parent, and it was quite a short volume, which is entirely what you need at that point, because your concentration span is tiny. And I got it, and I got one other one, and they sort of helped, but not really, and they were too general as well. So I'm going to put that right. I'm going to write the book that I wanted to read when my father passed away. Something that's, that's nice to look at, but also just gives in one place gives all the stuff that I found helpful, because I found bits and bobs on the internet that were useful, and things people had said on podcasts like this or on radio shows. But I think it would just be really good to have them all together in one place, because my situation is by no means unique.
Right.
And if I could help other people, just have that sort of slight shortcut to at least feeling a bit more comfortable with what's going on, rather than just feeling like, I don't know, just the lack of, it just doesn't feel real, for days and weeks and months.
If it's not quite a checklist, but if you had a guide on, this is what I need to do, how I'm going to be feeling, because that's another thing, you're surprised by some of the emotions, I'm sure, at times. So just something like laying it all out, thinking, right, I'm at that stage. Okay, I'm nowhere near the end, but I know that I'm somewhere.
Yeah, and also I think I would want to be quite clear about, this is what happened to me, and this is what I did. It's just how it worked out for me. There's lots of other things, but for example, the walking thing, that was just as a family. My dad, my brother and I used to walk quite a lot, and we were brought up in the country, so I just found that I was doing more and more of it, and it's away from a screen, and it's away from other people, and it just allows your mind to naturally wander, which I think is so important. And that's one of the things that really helped me, but that might not necessarily help other people, but they will have an equivalent, whether it's, I don't know, doing yoga, or it might be baking, or it could be anything. But I think that
comfort, shall we say, whether it's doing something, but something that you enjoy, where you feel safe and secure in a way.
Yes, and something where you allow your mind to wander without looking at a screen or listening to anything else, that just kind of pure meditation in a way, I guess.
And what advice would you give someone going through a similar situation right now?
Definitely get some counselling, because you're going to need that third party, someone who's not as attached to the situation as everyone else. I would also say that people around you will react in slightly odd ways, and you will find that friends react in very different ways. Some of them will be angry at you because they don't know how to help you. Some of them will just disappear off the face of the earth. But they'll probably come back. I mean, I found, that they did literally disappear off the face of the earth, probably for about a year, but then they come back as if nothing has happened, and they're super helpful and supportive now, but I think probably just didn't know what to do at the time. So it's very difficult, but try not to hold it against people the way that they react, because it quite often, I think, brings up for them their own experiences, their own worries.
It's making them fear, really.
Yeah, absolutely. It either brings up memories of the person, or of other people that have died, or it just makes them realise, their own mortality. So it's a really difficult thing for people to deal with, but talk as much as you can, I think, and just bloody look after yourself,
That's essential, really.
Yeah.
And finally, do you have any regrets?
It would have been nicer to have spent more time with him, but I think that's a really obvious one, and everybody would say that. And my brother and I were super lucky because we spent so much time with him. It I think, yeah, the regret is just that I didn't spend quite as much time with him towards the end. But I think, I think that's
probably
sort of, yeah, it's just bound to happen, isn't it? But I'm not sure that there are any others, no. Which is a nice place to be. I feel lucky from that point of view.
Well, Hannah, thank you so much for sharing your story.
That's a pleasure.
I'm not quite going to say if you enjoyed the show, but if you got something from it, if you, we're happy to listen to it, if it takes you in any way, then it'd be great if you could subscribe and leave us a review, but more importantly, come back to our next episode. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you.